There's a certain kind of quiet that only exists when you're home. It's not the quiet of boredom, not the kind that feels empty. It's the quiet that feels like safety. It's that feeling when you hear the distant hum of the refrigerator, the soft click of a clock, and realize that for once, nobody needs you to be anywhere else. It's not loneliness, it's peace. But most people don't understand that. They'll look at someone who loves staying home and assume they're antisocial, withdrawn, maybe even afraid of the world. They see a retreat from life, but they're wrong. Because for some people, home isn't a retreat from life. It's the one place where they can actually breathe. Because out there, in the constant noise of comparison, pressure, and performance, they lose themselves. At home, they find who they are again. So why? Why does the outside world feel so heavy? Maybe it started when they were younger. The classroom, the bus, the crowd, places filled with noise and chaos. For some, those spaces felt like survival tests. You had to speak louder to be heard, pretend more to be accepted, and smile wider to seem okay. So they built an inner world instead, a world that was softer, slower, more forgiving. That's when home became more than a place. It became a sanctuary. Psychologists have a name for this. Many people who love being at home have high sensitivity to external stimuli. That means their brains process the world more intensely. Bright lights, loud sounds, too much conversation, the subtle energy of a crowded room. It can all feel like a flood. So the quiet of home isn't avoidance, it's balance. It's the nervous system finally saying, here, I can rest. But let's be honest, it's not just about overstimulation. There's something deeper, something almost spiritual about it. Because home is the only place where we get to take off the mask. Think about it. The social version of us, the one that smiles on command, the one that knows just what to say, when to laugh, how to fit in, that version is exhausting. That version can finally dissolve when the door closes behind us. And what's left? The raw, unfiltered version. The one that doesn't need to impress anyone. The one that just exists. It's strange, isn't it? How a person can be surrounded by people all day and still feel completely unseen. But the moment they're home, sitting by a window with a cup of tea, they finally feel visible to themselves. This is the quiet magic of solitude. It's not isolation, it's intimacy, but with your own soul. We often romanticize extroversion in our culture. We celebrate those who are constantly busy, constantly out there, doing, posting, performing. We treat silence like it's suspicious and stillness like it's laziness. But there's a quiet power in people who know how to be alone without feeling lonely, because they've learned that fulfillment isn't always found in noise. Sometimes it's found in the pauses. There's an old saying, if you don't go within, you go without. For people who love staying home, going within isn't avoidance, it's alignment. It's how they process emotion, how they recover from overstimulation, and how they reconnect with what's real. Think about it. When you're constantly surrounded by people, your identity starts to fragment. You become a version of yourself for each audience. But when you're home, you're the only audience that matters. Of course, there's a fine line between healthy solitude and painful withdrawal. Even the most introverted souls need connection. But here's the paradox. People who love staying at home often have deeper relationships, not shallower ones. Why? Because they don't waste energy on superficial connections. They crave the kind of bond where silence feels comfortable, where you can sit with someone for hours and not feel the anxious need to fill the air with words. It's presence, not performance. This is not arrogance, it's discernment. They'd rather be alone than be surrounded by people who make them feel invisible. And when they do find the right people, they love deeply, quietly, completely. Because they know the value of their energy. They give attention carefully, affection intentionally, and trust slowly. And that's why their relationships often last. They're built on depth, not noise. When psychologists study solitude, they find something fascinating. People who spend more intentional time alone tend to score higher on measures of creativity and emotional intelligence. It's not because they're smarter, it's because they're reflective. They process their feelings instead of just drowning in them. They observe their own thoughts instead of just running from them. In that stillness, ideas form, clarity emerges, and emotional wounds quietly begin to heal. Think about the times you've had your biggest realizations. They probably didn't come when you were at a crowded party or lost in a noisy cafe. They came in the shower, late at night in your room, or during a quiet walk when no one else was around. That is the hidden power of staying home. It gives your mind the silence it needs to speak clearly. But here's what's ironic. Many people who love staying home carry a secret guilt about it. They feel like they're missing out, like life is happening somewhere else and they're failing to keep up. Social media makes it 1,000 times worse. Endless photos of parties, trips, and smiles. It makes homebodies feel like they're doing something wrong. But the truth is, the highlight reel of other people's lives isn't the full story. Everyone is chasing peace, and for some people, peace just looks like staying home. There's something deeply human about needing a place to retreat, to pause, to reset. In ancient times, monks would go to mountains or caves to meditate. Today, people do it in bedrooms, reading corners, or tiny apartments filled with plants and music. It's the same impulse, the need to return to stillness after the chaos. The home is just the modern temple. And here's the psychology behind it. When you're at home, you're in what scientists call a low-threat environment. Your body stops producing as much cortisol, the stress hormone, because there's no need to defend or perform. That's why your thoughts often feel clearer at home. That's why you might suddenly get emotional when you're alone. Your guard drops, and all the feelings you've been holding back all day finally rise to the surface. It's healing, disguised as quiet. But not everyone understands this. Sometimes people will say things like, "You need to get out more," or "You're wasting your youth." What they don't realize is that staying home doesn't mean doing nothing. Some of the most meaningful growth happens there. Reading, reflecting, journaling, dreaming. These are all quiet revolutions happening behind closed doors. There's also a psychological comfort in routine. The brain loves predictability because it reduces anxiety. When you know where everything is, when the space feels familiar, your mind relaxes. For someone who loves staying home, this predictability becomes sacred. It's not monotony, it's emotional regulation. Every object, every small ritual, from lighting a candle to making the same morning coffee, becomes a way of telling the nervous system, "You're safe now." Yet, in a world obsessed with productivity, that kind of stillness feels rebellious. We're taught that to be valuable, we must always be visible, always doing, always achieving. But people who love staying home quietly challenge that idea. They prove that meaning doesn't always come from motion. Sometimes it comes from stillness, from being rooted enough to notice the rain tapping against the window, from having the time to think deeply about who you're becoming. And maybe that's why homebodies often have such a rich inner world. When you spend enough time in solitude, imagination starts to bloom. You begin to see connections others miss. You notice the poetry in ordinary things. The way sunlight hits a wall. The way dust dances in the air. There's beauty there. Quiet, but undeniable. It's a slower kind of happiness, one that doesn't need to be captured or shared to be real. Some people will never understand that kind of contentment. To them, silence feels heavy, and solitude feels like punishment. But for those who love being home, silence is not emptiness, it's music. It's the sound of finally being enough. There's a beautiful paradox hidden inside people who love staying at home. They're often labeled as detached or distant. But the truth is, they feel life too deeply. Every conversation, every noise, every glance, it all leaves a mark. And when the world gets too loud, their instinct isn't to escape it, but to protect their own peace. It's not fear of others, it's care for themselves. So, the people who love staying home aren't necessarily avoiding the world. They're preparing for it. They're recharging, rebuilding, recentering. And when they do step out, they bring calm instead of chaos. They're not running from life, they're walking toward it. Slowly, intentionally, without the noise. They're rediscovering what it means to simply be. Not to impress, not to achieve, but to feel. There's beauty in the invisible life. In moments that no one claps for. In progress that only you can feel. And maybe that's the secret. Maybe quiet living is not about disappearing, but about finally existing without performance. So if you're someone who loves staying at home, don't apologize for it. Don't let the world convince you that peace is unproductive or that comfort is complacency. You're not missing out. You're tuning in. You're doing the inner work most people are too busy to notice. And that work, quiet as it seems, is what shapes everything else. Because when the world feels uncertain, when people are searching for meaning, it's often the quiet ones who've already found it. Not in crowds or noise, but in the gentle rhythm of ordinary days. The warmth of morning light, the softness of evening rain, the sound of your own heartbeat in the stillness of a room that finally feels like yours. The home isn't just a building, it's a reflection of peace earned, not given. A sanctuary built out of patience, presence, and authenticity. It's where you meet yourself again and again, until one day you realize you were never really alone. You were just coming home to yourself.